Okay, first things first, this is that KitchenAid 550 HD Professional model, the one with the 5.5 quart bowl. But I've seen the majority of these KitchenAids and they all work relatively the same. And so what you have is you have a couple of gears inside of this housing that sometimes strip depending on what you're trying to mix. In our case, you know, a lot of bagels, a lot of different things that put a lot of pressure on the gear, and there's this one particular gear that tends to strip. So what I'm showing you right there, those two are probably your two main gears. That one right there that I'm holding in my hand is called the gear worm, and the other one is the brass worm follow gear. All right, so that first one is the gear worm, and then the other one is the brass worm follow gear. And I'm going to put a link at the bottom so that way you can know, you know, the blueprints on these particular machine, and that way if you want to order any extra parts, there's a great website that has the schematics of your unit and each part, and they sell every single part that you can have. And so what we did was we took the most common parts that are you know, that need to be replaced, and we bought 3 or 4 of each because we live in an area where they're kind of challenging to get. First thing you want to do is you want to take that one screw off the very back of your unit. That's going to remove that metal strip, and what it's going to do, it's going to expose the 4 screws that hold the casing for the top of this motor unit. And so you're just going to unscrew each one of those. Those are standard Phillips head screws. And what I did is I'm putting them inside of a little container that's got a paper towel in it. And a couple things you're going to want to have is a Phillips head screwdriver. If you have some gloves, you're going to want to get some gloves because it's going to get messy in a minute, as we're going to have to clean out the old grease. And you want to have a couple extra paper towels and whatnot on hand. There's also a unique tool that isn't necessarily mandatory, but it comes in awfully handy, and you'll see it in a second. It's like a set of reverse pliers. So basically, pliers normally when you squeeze it, they tighten. Well, in this case, when you squeeze these pliers, it opens, and you'll see why, because there's a particular clip that we need to remove that that requires this special set of pliers. But you know, if you're good with some needles, then you can obviously use some needles. You can needle up, you know, you can put in some fishing line through the holes, and you should be able to open it up pretty easy. You're going to remove the case cover, the hard cover off the top, and what it's going to do, it's going to expose the inner workings of this KitchenAid. Let me get a little bit closer so you can see. And basically it's comprised of 3 parts. You're going to have the motor, which is on the back end. You're going to have the control panel, which operates the speed functions, and then you're going to have the gear housing, and that's what we're going to open up right now. To open up the gear housings, there's 4 screws, and they're very visible. Actually, one is directly behind the control panel, and I suppose I should have removed the control panel because it's just removing 2 screws, but I didn't, and I end up regretting it because I dropped the screw back there later, and I had to remove it anyway. So what I would do is I would just go ahead and remove the control panel and then just get it out of the way, and then remove these 4 screws so that you take the housing off of the gears. All right. Once you remove these 4 screws, the top easily comes off. You're going to notice that underneath this particular housing, there's what they call a gasket transmission cover. And that gasket transmission cover, we buy several extra ones. Every time I replace a gear, I normally replace that gasket just for good measure. And so I went ahead and put that to the side. There's going to be a lot of grease in this thing. When those gears move, it gets very, very hot. That grease tends to soften up a little bit, and it keeps everything lubricated. And so let's go through the basic functions of what you're looking at. The very first thing you're going to be looking at right now is that gear worm. It's on the right hand side. That's the main gear that drives the entire KitchenAid. So basically the motor turns, that gear that's attached to the motor turns the gear worm, which is on the right hand side, and then that gear worm turns the other two gears. Now those other two gears are what control either the mixer on the bottom or the attachments that you put on the top. Alright, so the first thing we want to do is we want to remove the clip, and this clip is what's actually keeping that first gear in place. And you'll see how we use this special tool, and there's two little holes that fit perfectly within the notch. We squeeze it like a pair of pliers, and what it does is it opens up that clip. The very first time I tried to do it, I actually didn't have this tool, and I was using pliers to pull it apart, and I ended up stripping that clip. I needed to buy a new one. But so once we remove the clip, we remove the gear worm. Now that's the main gear that drives your unit, and you want to be careful because there's two bearings on either side, so just keep those all together for the time being. As you remove that, you're going to notice that that top gear, now that's the gear that operates any attachment that you put on the top of the KitchenAid. So if you have a grinder or something like that, that just slides right off once you've removed the clip. And I'm putting all these to the side, and in a minute I'm going to clean them real well. I'm going to do that off camera. Notice there's a pin. Do you see that little pin right there? That pin is actually holding the housing to the gear. And so we're going to remove that pin simply by pushing it through and then pulling it out. And so I'll show you how to do that here in a second. It comes out fairly easy. If you have a fairly old KitchenAid and you've never had to maintain it or tweak it, it may be a little more challenging to get out. But see, all you got to do is push it through, and you can pull it out. It's a little greasy, but you get the idea. You want to be careful to not lose any of these pieces, and that's why I keep them all inside of a contained little pan. Alright, so once you pull that gear out, basically push that pin all the way down, and that bottom shaft falls right out. And you can just set that to the side. Once that bottom shaft falls out, you are now able to remove this particular gear. Now this particular gear is the brass worm follow gear, and it's the one that most commonly gets stripped when you're doing some heavy-duty mixing. This is the gear that actually mixes that's responsible for mixing the KitchenAid. And you'll see right here, notice the difference. See right there, it looks like the gears have just been eaten away. So what's happening is if you're mixing something that's fairly difficult, a large batch of dough or some very cold meat or something like that, you put a lot of resistance on this gear, and that gear up against that worm gear will start to strip it. And I'm going to show you a new one here. I'm also going to put a link below, like I said, where to get these parts and pieces. But before you put anything new in your system, you want to make sure that you clean out all the old grease. If your gear was stripped like mine was, and you'll know because when you're working your KitchenAid you can hear it. It sounds like a lot of knocking is going on and it's not turning. When that's going on, you're going to have shards of metal inside of your KitchenAid transmission housing, and those shards of metal are going to be all caught up inside the oil, inside that grease. And what happens is if you do not replace your grease, if you don't clean it out completely, then while that gear is working, after you've put the new one, those shards of metal are going to maintain inside of it. It's going to damage your gears a whole lot quicker. And so just since you have it opened, go ahead and clean it all out completely, and you're going to save yourself a headache. Okay, now that I've got it cleaned out, it doesn't have to be spotless, but trying to get all that extra grease out is definitely recommended. Look at the new versus the old. Okay, this particular gear, you can quite visibly see all the teeth are straight. They're all directly lined up, and you can see that other one had quite a bit of wear and tear on it. We use this KitchenAid pretty hard, and we've had it for 7 years, and I'd have to say about once a year we end up having to switch out this gear. And this gear, once you buy the parts, you're going to realize it only costs about $13. So in 7 years, I got to tell you, it's probably paid for itself many, many times over. Great piece of equipment. Before I put anything back in it, I'm going to go ahead and apply some food grade grease. And I'm going to make sure I put a nice thick coating on inside all those cavities. I want to make sure that all of my gears rest nice inside of them, and then when I'm done with that, I'm going to apply some more liberally on top, because it's all going to be contained in that transmission housing. Alright, now the first thing you want to do is you want to pop that bottom piece right back where it went, and you're going to push it in all the way to the top. And while you hold it with your left hand, you're going to put your new gear in with your right hand, and you're just going to push that to where it sets firmly right inside of that grease. You're going to want to push it down as far as it can go, and you're going to know you have it down far enough because you're going to expose the little hole that you can replace the pin back in. Okay? Then we're going to put that pin right back in the hole, and if you need to line it up properly, you can rotate that shaft by rotating the bottom gear, and you can just easily turn it with your hand. You're going to notice that it has to be in a specific position. Notice the gear that goes on top of it has notches pre-made in order for it to work. And so you want to make sure that you line it up so that when you put that next gear right on top, it just lines up perfectly. There you go. And it lines up and it snaps into place, and once it snaps into place, it's in business. Okay, now we are going to put the clip back on it. You should only have this clip and a handful of screws remaining. You definitely don't want any extra parts. And so notice how I've just opened it up a tiny little bit. I'm sliding it right back where I took it off, and it's going to fit into a notch that's already set directly on that rod. Okay, now once you have this properly lubed up, it's time to put that transmission housing right back on top. Notice that bottom felt piece, I replaced it, but you don't necessarily have to. Usually they're on pretty stable, and as long as you clean it off, you can put it right back on. And so if you're careful to not take it off when you're removing that housing, then you won't have to replace it. Alright, so this should fit just like a little puzzle piece. The screw holes should line up without a problem. And you want to make sure that it's nice and tight. Just make sure that there's nothing obstructing that particular gasket, and that gasket has a nice little fit. Otherwise, you're going to have that food grade grease leak out, when your machine is running quite hot. Those 4 screws are going to fit right into those 4 notches. So you can get a better idea of what it looked like. I went ahead and removed that control panel, and that control panel is just attached with 2 screws. And so if you do remove that control panel before you begin, just remove those 2 screws, flip the control panel over the back of the machine, and that way it's out of your way, so you don't have to worry about it. But you're now putting it all back together. This should look very familiar. You're hand tightening each one of them. Once you do all 4 corners, you want to come back one last time. You definitely don't want to strip it, but you want it to be on quite tight. And you're going to replace the circuit panel if you happen to have taken it off. And so, like I said, it's not necessary unless you just want to work in a completely free space, avoid from any obstacles. In that case, I recommend you do taking it off. And to put it back on, it's very easy. Just line up the screw holes. There's 2 of them. And with the same Phillips screwdriver and the same screws, you're just going to put them right back in. And in 20 seconds, it'll be ready to go. Alright, now we're going to put the metal top back on your machine. We're going to put the housing cover right back on the machine, and this is going to fit right on top of it. The holes are going to line up perfectly, and you're just going to put the 4 screws right back where they go. Alright, now we're going to fasten that metal aluminum strip back where it goes, and it's only going to go one way, and you're going to know that you're lined up right because the speed control numbers are going to be lined up directly with the variable speed control switch. And so all you're going to do is you're going to squeeze that together, and you're going to go ahead and put your screw in. It can get a little tricky. There you go. Definitely possible to get it with one person. And so once you get that put in place, your machine is put back together. You should have absolutely no extra parts. And so you just want to check around, make your workstation make sure you don't have any extra screws or anything, or pins or clips or anything lying around. And once you've got that all set up, you want to turn your machine on and run it on low. And then after a second or two, turn it on speed 5 or 6. And run it on high for about 10 seconds or so to get it well lubricated. Alright, at this point you should be good to go. Your machine is back in working order, and thanks for watching this video. Make sure you click that logo to subscribe and stay tuned for some other really cool how-to videos from Two Guys in a Cooler.